Hi everyone, you're listening to Bookworms being broadcast to you today on Arrow 92.7 FM, your community access radio channel, and Wairarapa TV on Freeview Channel 41. This programme is broadcast live every other Tuesday at 3 p.m. and repeated on the Tuesdays in between at 3 p.m. Now, over the course of the next 30 minutes, we'll read you a few of our favourite literary treasures. In this case, it's Dylan Thomas, which we hope you'll find interesting. So my name is Steve Lilliston, and with me today are my friends Eunice
Radford, you ratbag.
I knew you know. Eunice Radford, Sheila Wilde and Alan Wilde. So welcome, guys.
Hello there,
Thank you.
Steve, thank you.
So as I say, today we're going to focus on the Welsh poet, author and playwright Dylan Thomas. So Eunice, Sheila and Alan will do some readings from his seminal work, Under Milkwood, and I'll finish off by reading an excerpt from H.V. Morton's In Search of Wales. Now, 6 years ago, Eunice directed a group of us in a radio production of Under Milkwood, broadcast here at Arrow 92.7 FM, with Arrow's Michael Wilson as the technical director. The play ended up as a finalist in the Best Spoken Informational English Language Programme for 2013, and this is the Beastie.
Oh,
That's our award.
So there we are.
Yeah.
Very proud of that.
Yes,
And that was a
yeah.
wonderful show, wasn't it, guys?
Yeah, it was
Just absolutely
fantastic.
incredible. So, and we've got copies for sale. No, we haven't. There's one other thing I wanted to say before we get started, was that our very good friend from Carterton, Angela Yeoman, alias Buttercup, to one or two of us, just won a silver medal in the 2019 Global eBook Awards held recently in the Historical Literature Fiction Contemporary category for her novel The War of Gwilym Harris, which sounds very Welsh to me. But
It does.
Steve, maybe we should read some of that when we're next doing bookworms.
Wow.
I was thinking we might even get Angela in here
Yes, exactly.
and get her to read some.
Yeah,
Good idea.
Yeah, good
Yeah.
thinking.
That's good.
So anyway, that's on the Amazon's Kindle store for just a few dollars. I downloaded it this morning, had a quick read, and it's really, really good. Not just because she's a friend, it is really, really good. So so there we are. I think at this point we can hand over to Eunice. So if you want to kick off, Eunice, you're
Yes. Under Milkwood was written by Dylan Thomas, and today I would like to read or introduce you all to some of the wonderful, weird and wonderful characters that he created in Under Milkwood. Under Milkwood, the village in Under Milkwood was called Llaregub, and that is spelled Llaregub. And if you spell it backwards, you'll have a bit of a surprise. The main character, the narrator for Under Milkwood, was first voice, so I hand you over to Alan Wilde, who will introduce Under Milkwood for us.
To begin at the beginning. It is spring moonless night in the small town, starless and Bible black. The cobble street silent, and the hunched quarters and rabbitswood limping, invisible down to the slow black, crowback, fishing boat bobbing sea. And all the people of the lulled and dumbfound town are sleeping now. Hush. The babies are sleeping. The farmer, the fishers, the tradesmen, pensioners, cobbler, schoolteacher, postman and publican, the undertaker and fancy woman, drunkard, dressmaker, preacher, policeman, the web-footed cockle woman and the tidy wives.
And the tidy wives are gossiping at the pump.
Poor Mrs. Waldo.
What she puts up with.
Never should have married.
If she did not do,
Same as a mother.
Oh, there's a husband for you.
Bad as his father.
And you know where he ended?
Up in the asylum.
Crying for his ma.
Every Saturday.
No, he hasn't got a leg.
And carrying on.
With that Mrs. Beatty Morris.
Up in the quarry.
And seen her baby. Oh,
It's got his nose.
oh, it makes my heart bleed.
What he'll do for drink.
He sold the pianola.
And her sewing machine.
Falling in the gutter.
Talking to the lamppost.
Using language.
Singing in the W.
Poor Mrs. Waldo.
Can I jump in here a second? I'd just like to say that. So this was written, what period do you think? 40s, 50s?
I don't know.
40s, I think.
40s,
So-
I would say.
74.
70. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Really?
74.
That's interesting.
No, sorry, 54.
54.
Yeah.
And
50s is better.
74.
I thought it was
54.
40s or 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess the big thing is this is just like a slice of Welsh life
Oh,
at that
absolutely.
time, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's beautiful.
A movie
As
you
he
can-
saw it.
No
Yes, as he
people
saw
like
it.
Yes,
this now.
yes.
It
Yeah.
still goes on like that now.
Yeah, yeah,
Does it?
yeah.
Is that right?
Absolutely.
Is that right? Is it-
You can
yes.
bet it does. Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
No, good.
The next characters are called the Pews, and that's Mr. and Mrs., and we call them Mr. and Mrs. Cold Pew because they hate each other. And he reads books called Lives of the Great Poisoners because he really is plotting to murder her because she's a harridan.
Here's your arsenic, dear, and your weed killer biscuit. I've throttled your parakeet, I've spat in the vases, I've put cheese in the mouse holes. Here's your nice tea, dear.
Too much sugar.
You haven't tasted it yet, dear.
Too much milk, then. Has Mr. Jenkins said his poetry?
Yes, dear.
Then it's time to get up. Give me my glasses. No, not my reading glasses. I want to look out. I want to see.
Lily Small's the treasure, down on her red knees, washing the front step. Oh, she's tucked her dress in her bloomers. Oh,
the
the baggage.
Lovely.
And then we'd like to introduce you to probably my favourite characters in they're Mr. and Mrs. Cherry Owen, and they love each other to pieces. But Mr. Cherry Owen is a bit of a drunkard. See that smudge on the wall by the picture of Auntie Blossom? That's where you threw the sago. You only missed me by an inch.
I always miss Auntie Blossom, too.
Remember last night? Oh, in you reeled, my boy, as drunk as a deacon, with a big wet bucket and a fish frail full of stout. And you looked at me and you said, God has come home, you said. And then over the bucket you went sprawling and bawling, and the floor was all flagons and eels.
Was I wounded?
And then you took off your trousers and you said, does anybody want to fight? Oh, you old baboon.
Give us a kiss.
And then you sang Bread of Heaven, tenor and bass.
I always sing Bread of Heaven.
And then you did a little dance on the table.
I did?
Drop dead.
And then what did I do?
Well, then you cried like a baby and you said you were a poor drunk orphan with nowhere to go but the grave.
What did I do then, my dear?
Then you danced on the table all over again and you said you were King Solomon Owen and I was your Mrs. Sheba.
And then?
And then I got you into bed. Oh. And you snored all night like a brewery.
Delightful.
Dylan Thomas says Dye Bread the baker has 2 wives, one for the daytime and one for the night. Mrs. Dye Bread 1 and Mrs. Dye Bread 2 are sitting outside the house in Donkey Lane, one darkly, one plumply, blooming in the quick, dewy sun. Mrs. Dye Bread 2 is looking into a crystal ball, which she holds in her lap of a dirty yellow petticoat, hard against her dark thighs.
Cross my palm with silver out of our housekeeping money.
What do you see, lovey?
I see a feather bed with 3 pillows on it and a text above the bed. Oh, I can't read what it says. There's great clouds blowing. Oh, now they've blown away. God is love, the text says.
That's our bed.
And now it's vanished. The sun's spinning like a top. Who's this coming out of the sun? Oh, it's a hairy little man with big pink lips. He got a wall eye.
It's Dye Bread.
Shh! The feather bed's floating back. The little man's taking his boots off. He's pulling his shirt over his head. He's beating his chest with his fists. He's climbing into bed.
Go on.
There's 2 women in the bed. He looks at them both with his head cocked on one side. He's whistling through his teeth. Now he grips his little arms round one of the women.
Which one?
Oh, I can't see any more. There's great clouds blowing again.
The mean old clouds.
And then we'd like to introduce you to Polly Garter. Polly Garter is probably what today we'd call the town bike. She's the town fancy woman. She's a wonderful character, and I'll hand you over to Sheila, who will be Polly Garter.
Me, Polly Garter, under the washing line, giving the breast in the garden to my bonny new baby. Nothing grows in our garden, only washing and babies.
Oh.
And where's their fathers live, my love? Over the hills and far away. You're looking up at me now. I know what you're thinking, you poor little milky creature. You're thinking you're no better than you should be, Polly, and that's good enough for me. Oh, isn't life a terrible thing? Thank God.
Polly Garter now sings.
I loved a man whose name was Tom. He was strong as a bear and 2 yards long. I loved a man whose name was Dick. He was big as a barrel and 3 feet thick. And I loved a man whose name was Harry, 6 feet tall and sweet as a cherry. But the one I loved best, awake or asleep, was little Willie Wee, and he's 6 feet deep. Oh, Tom, Dick and Harry were 3 fine men, and I'll never have such loving again. But little Willie Wee, who took me on his knee, little Willie Wee was the man for me.
Very nice.
The thin night darkens. A breeze from the creased waters sighs the street close under milk-waking wood. The suddenly wind-shaken wood springs awake for the second dark time this one spring day.
Lovely, guys. That's absolutely fantastic. As I say, there's a slice of life from a Welsh village 50, 60 years ago, I guess.
It'd be the same if you went there today.
Yeah, and you say,
Yeah.
I don't believe that.
I can.
Yes.
Up until a few years ago, anyway, when Sheila and I went back with our youngsters for the first time, my father and brother were both dead, of course, and we were in their bedroom, sleeping in the bed, and hearing the things they would have heard when they were waiting to go to sleep. And she'll confirm that you'd hear clip-clop, clip-clop, clip-clop coming up the street as each one was coming back from the club down in the village.
Oh, really?
And you'd hear whisper, whisper, see you in the morning, and Doris. Yes, all right. Good night now, good night. Bang, clip-clop, clip-clop, bang. The next one would be clip-clop, clip-clop, clip-clop. Good night then, Jack. Good night, Harry. You going to the game tomorrow? No. Why not? Well, they don't come and see me when I'm bad. Bugger 'em. Oh, okay then. Good night. Bang. Clip clop, bang.
And then you'd get the one with the clip clop, bang, and then the door would open again, and out would go throwing the cat.
And we heard all this. It's very similar to what you did.
So we were lying in bed there, and we were in stitches.
Yeah.
We really were, weren't we?
Oh, God. That could have been written by Dylan Thomas himself.
Yeah, well, that's right.
That's fabulous, guys. Thank you. Thank you. The next thing I want to do is, as I said, a reading from H.V. Morton, In Search of Wales, if you can read that.
Right.
H.V. Morton, I've read some of his stuff before. He wrote travel logs back in the 20s and 30s, maybe even into the 40s and 50s, I'm not sure. This one was written in 1932, I think. So again, it's another slice of life in a Welsh village. And it's also a little section on the Gower Peninsula, which is where Dylan Thomas was from, Swansea, Gower Peninsula. So the Welsh people here, you'll have to excuse my pronunciation. I'll do the best I can. I've practiced, but I'm still not very good. So, the Gower Peninsula is one of the most exquisite parts of Wales. I went there on a sunny day and found myself in a land of golden gorse, blue butterflies, and winds from the sea. This lovely peninsula is almost as remote as the wildest part of Snowdon. It has the characteristics of an island. You look across at the shore of Carmarthen and think of it as the mainland. For Gower has its own customs, its own traditions, its own speech, its own precious individuality. Mumbles, or the Mumbles as they call it, is of course known to everyone in Swansea, and fortunately it seems to satisfy the crowds who do not penetrate into Gower. Beyond Mumbles the road twists in the most delightful way to small happy-looking villages, to farms, to woodland, and to golden commons aflame with gorse, and always they lead to cliffs and the sea. Two civilizations are represented by the cockle women of Pencloth, and the tin plate workers of Llanelli, who look at each... Close?
Well done.
Oh, thank you.
Got
Thank
that
you.
right.
I've been working on that one. Who look at each other over 2 or 3 miles of the Llanrhidian sands. Two distinct peoples live in Gower, as in Pembrokeshire, the English, or apparently English, and the unmistakably Welsh. The west of Gower is, like Pembrokeshire, full of English place names: Fernhill, Nelson, Old Walls, Reynoldstone, Cheriton, Overton, Moor Corner, Pilton Green. And then it goes on a little bit about the different accents and things, but I just want to finish off the section on the Gower Peninsula. On a little wooded cliff at Oxwich stands a church. It is so near the sea that in winter the spray must splash the old stones. I have never seen a more ghostly little church. I came to it after sunset, and the tide was high in Oxwich Bay. The wind had dropped, and the church stood in the shadow of the trees, surrounded by a desolate, hilly little burial ground whose tombstones leant upward from the long grass. When I entered this haunted church, I could hear the rhythm of the waves breaking below. It was a miniature church with a chancel barely 3 yards in length. To the right of the altar, in a recess, I came upon a stone man asleep in plate armour. In the dusk, I came to Arthur's Stone at Llanryddion. It is a huge cromlech, about 14 feet in height, and was, in the old days, one of the most famous and venerated objects in South Wales. It has a queer, lifelike appearance in the half-light, so that you can almost believe the old story that in the night time it moves down to the sea to drink. If you ask me to name 3 of the most interesting and charming districts in Wales, I would choose Anglesey, the Llain Peninsula, and Gower. I shall always think of Gower as a place where herds of wild-looking ponies stand among golden gorse, and where the sea whispers by day and night to little lonely bays.
He's a good writer.
That's
isn't he?
very,
Isn't
yes,
he
a
good?
very good
Very
writer.
descriptive.
Isn't
Yes.
he good?
Gower
Well done,
Coast is
Steve.
gorgeous. It's
Yeah.
That
really
was
lovely. It's
Some
really
80 years ago he wrote that.
Yeah.
And I wonder, just like you said, that with the conversations, just how much that has changed, and the scenery in particular.
Yeah.
Whether, I don't know if you're familiar
Scenery
with those
really
places.
hasn't changed much because we went to Larne, where Dylan Thomas wrote Under Milkwood,
Right.
and Alan sat in his chair.
So
right.
did I. And I
wasn't gonna
cried.
mention that.
But
They have an audio visual of him, of Dylan, actually reading from Under Milkwood.
Oh,
So I
really?
sat with my hand on the desk that he wrote it, looking out at the view
is
that he
beautiful.
would have seen.
that's right, and it was on top of a cliff,
Yeah,
and out
yeah,
looking out
yeah.
at sea and
Right.
stuff.
Pretty
But as I
Liverpool.
said to you before, you know, around West Glamorgan, where this takes place, the number of interesting actors that have come from that area.
Yes.
You know, apart from Richard Burton, that was famous for doing Under Milkwood, you had Anthony Hopkins,
Yes.
Richard Harris,
Oh, really?
you
Catherine,
had
Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Catherine Zeta-Jones, and you had the brothers of Glyn and Donald Houston.
Yeah.
You know,
I didn't
all
know-
of those came
Very,
from
very
there.
rich
It
area.
is a very rich area.
I just wanted to say that
Is it something in the water? I was
Must be.
Could be. Could be.
sorry.
very
Eunice.
recently come back from Wales, where I went down to Swansea, and my niece took me to Dylan Thomas's house in Cumdonkin Street, and I had my photo taken outside Cumdonkin Street, and they have tours where you can go around and have a look inside the house. Very ordinary little 2-bedroom place. And then we went down to a statue of Dylan Thomas in the square in Swansea itself. And I had my photograph taken holding his hand. So, you know, we have a love
Did he
of...
mind?
Famous for a day.
We have a love affair with that man. But he actually was born in 1914. And he was a reporter on the South Wales Evening Post. But he didn't live very long. He
No,
was a drunkard.
he was.
Yes.
He abused his liver.
Yeah.
Something awful.
Didn't he die in America?
And he died in 1953, collapsed in New York.
New York. Yes, that's right.
But his body is buried in Larne. Yeah,
Right.
that's interesting, isn't it?
39. Imagine what he could have done. With it.
Yes.
Exactly.
He didn't. They'd said that he didn't actually finish Under Milkwood.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, Ray Henwood put on the most remarkable play, one-man play of him on his last day, if you like, in New York, drinking at the bar, smoking and drinking, and recalling his life story. And Ray Henwood was outstanding.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, he
I
would
saw
be.
that.
He wrote that himself, or did he?
I don't know. I think he
about
may
that
have. Yes.
Yeah.
He's a Kiwi Welshman, isn't he?
Yes.
Ray Henwood.
Yes.
Yeah. That
Like,
was at
like a few
Circus-
other people I could think of.
Circuit Theatre. He did that, presented that.
Circa, yes.
Yeah. Ah, fabulous.
Fantastic.
Okay, guys. Well, that was fun. So we explored a bit of Under Milkwood, Dylan Thomas, and at his best.
Of course, what we haven't mentioned is that you took a big part in that play
Yes.
too.
Oh,
You took several parts.
Steve played Captain Cat, the blind sea captain.
And Mr. Pew.
And Mr. Pew,
Mr. Cold
And I
Pew.
think I was typecast in that.
And you were
wasn't
the
I?
director.
I directed you all,
And
very
you, Mr.
bossily.
She did. She
Yeah.
she was
Done a
awful.
good job.
And do you want to tell them now if they haven't been able to spell Garter?
Oh, I did say earlier,
Yes, I know.
Llaregub is Llaregub,
Yeah.
and if you spell it backwards, it spells.
Bugger all.
That's right.
Bugger all.
That's a typical example of Dylan's sense of humour.
Yes, but
Because-
why did he do that?
I've no idea.
Yes, you do.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
because because the BBC, once he'd finished Under Milkwood, the BBC asked him what it was called, what was the name of the village. He got a bit annoyed and short-tempered, and he hadn't really thought of a village. It was a typical Welsh village, and so then he quickly thought of
Garter.
and wrote it backwards, and it looked so much like an original Welsh name,
With
official Welsh name,
nobody
that
would
they
know.
accepted it without realising that backwards is spelled bugger all.
Well, that's a nice little poke at the BBC, who are
Yeah, it was,
so proper. And
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
they had a list of words that you were allowed to say and those
And
that you
some
weren't
you were
allowed
not.
to say.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
It's
so that was
very
typical of
strict in those
Dylan's
days.
humour, though.
Yeah.
Of course.
And even when we left Britain, a news reporter, all the even the weather reporter, all had to wear a collar and tie, of course. You know,
Right.
they
right.
couldn't be sat relaxed like this,
Right,
like you
right.
and
I was interested, you were talking about his reading of Under Milkwood, and I can remember listening to a recitation of his doing Under Milkwood, and I was struck by the fact that he didn't have a Welsh accent.
No, not
He
very
worked
Welsh.
very hard to get rid of that Welsh accent.
Yeah.
For the recording, I wonder whether that was...
Don't
Well,
know.
I think I can associate with that because I had a very famous brother, my oldest brother, famous in Wales at least,
Right.
and he was an elocutionist. And to become an elocutionist, you have to be a very good spokesman
You had to
and
talk-
understand the language
you
and
had
how
to
to
talk
pronounce
proper.
it. And so he studied from about the age of 14 how to pronounce English properly, and so when you got him in relaxed company in the family at Christmas time when we're all opening presents and chin wagging about, he was no normal Trevor. But when he was up on the stage introducing someone like Tom Jones, who he did introduce at one of his shows,
Right.
then he was very prim and proper, and his accent was very English.
It's funny, isn't it? You can even
Yeah.
you can associate that because the old newsreaders in New Zealand not so long ago had to have a clipped British
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
way
they
of
did.
talking. It's
Yeah.
so silly.
Yeah.
Dougal Stevenson, I think, was the last one I remember. Now
And
you
the other one
mention
was
that.
Yeah.
what,
Because the-
Philip Sherry, wasn't
Philip
he?
Sherry,
Yes,
That's
yeah.
right.
they moved the films the radio station from Wellington, Avalon, just around the corner from where we lived, up to Auckland, and Dougal Stevenson was one that refused to move.
Right. We had property in Wellington. A friend of mine used to have one of his flats.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, Dougal Stevenson.
Well.
Yeah. Anyway, guys, we're having far too much fun. We could probably sit
should
here
be
the rest
law
of the
against
day. Audience, they're still there. They're still there. It's okay. Listening avidly. I think we can probably finish off today, shall we?
That's lovely.
So thank you very much, everybody, for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Tune in again next Tuesday, the repeat next Tuesday, just in case you missed anything this Tuesday. And then the following Tuesday, it'll be a new show. And I'm not sure who's going to be in that, but it'll be equally as thrilling as this
So
one.
it's goodbye from me.
So it's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from
Us.
all them.
Yes.
Yes,
So
goodbye.
thank you very much.
Yes,
Goodbye.
thoroughly enjoyed it. Bye-bye.